It's time to turn down the noise and tune into this special edition of News You Can Use. Your host is Dr. Nick, the incrementalist, a longtime innovator exploring incremental changes across various industries that can be applied in healthcare. Combining the powers of observation and real-world experience, Dr. Nick makes the case that innovations in healthcare can be accomplished incrementally, not just by moonshot events. Now, here is Dr. Nick.
In this week's special edition of News You Can Use on Healthcare Now Radio, I sat down again with Adam Russo. He's the CEO and co-founder of the Phia group. And this week, we're exploring the fiduciary liability and what employers and brokers need to know about health plan oversight. Now, I feel like fiduciary liability is one of those terms like a winter bomb, or one of these new terms that we keep suddenly hearing about. And maybe it's just worth just explaining what that means in the context of this, if you would, before we dive into how all of this plays out in the healthcare plans. Adam, welcome to the show, as ever.
Thank you so much for having me back again. Every time I'm back, I'm always surprised that I'm re-invited. So I'll keep taking it. I feel like it's, as you all know, it's World Cup fever here in America.
Steady on. We'll get onto a really difficult sidetrack, and we'll have to edit it all out if you do that.
I don't want
to do that.
Let's not do that. Well, I was gonna bring up fiduciary concerns there.
With FIFA? Oh dear.
So many things we can talk about there, but the bottom line is, it's great to be back. And you mentioned fiduciary. For the past 25 years of my career, have been pushing self-funded employers to actually realize, one, that they are the fiduciary of the plan. The next question is your great point. What does that mean?
Right.
What does it mean to be a fiduciary? Okay. It means basically to act in the best interest of the plan at all times. Now, that's not the easiest thing to do. Even if I say act in the best interest of the plan, at the end of the day, what is best interest? That's another. You can just keep going down a rabbit hole here. But the way I like to tell people is pretty simple. You have to be prudent with plan assets. Right. Now, prudent means to be reasonable, to make the right decision. So let me give you an example of what I mean by this. So every single plan has a provision in it. Now, when I say every, please put an asterisk on that. Good plans have provisions. Every good plan should have this provision. But every plan has a provision in it that talks about reimbursement rights. Meaning, if the plan, so there's two different entities. The company itself, right? So let's just say ABC Company is one entity. ABC Company Employee Benefit Plan is a total separate entity. They are not the same. However, when people talk about plans, cases, companies in general, they sort of mix the two, okay? So, for example, Walmart. Walmart is Walmart. They have their own tax ID number and their own rules that apply in all 50 states. But the Walmart self-funded health plan for their employees and family members is a separate entity than Walmart itself.
Separate business, you mean?
Yes. So, for example, if the Walmart self-funded health plan decides not to pay claims for a person who's been there for 20 years, let's say, and people decide they want to protest Walmart for not paying this woman's claims, they're actually protesting the wrong individual.
Yeah. Okay.
Walmart itself doesn't make decisions based on the Walmart self-funded health plan. The fiduciaries, the plan sponsor of the health plan, is who makes those decisions. And I can tell you right now, it's not Sam Walton.
Right.
So that's the difference there. And most people don't understand that. Most people in our industry don't know that. So for my company, we're self-funded.
Yep.
I don't make the claim decisions.
So you even have, and forgive me, you're big, but you're nowhere near as big as Walmart.
Exactly.
But you even have a separate entity that is governed.
Yes.
Yeah.
So my plan sponsor which is it's two people. It's the head of HR and my chief legal officer.
Yep.
They're the ones who make the claim decisions
Right.
with the advice and help of their third-party administrator.
Right.
And I think that's where most people get this wrong right off the bat. They think, I don't know what they think, whether or not, it's the plan that makes a decision, the
Right.
company that makes a decision,
Well, I think
or
everything
the broker
ends
or
up at the
administrator.
company. We're with our pitchforks in hand, we go marching to who we think is responsible, but in fact, it's not the ultimate company. It's a subsidiary or a separate company. I'm probably getting into trouble here by using terms I shouldn't be, but okay. So completely separate organization, governed differently, but it still has to behave in a specific way
Yes.
that's covered by this. I know I said it wrong.
ERISA.
ERISA, thank you. It doesn't spell that way to my thinking, but ERISA, which is the Employment Retirement Income Security Act, which is
of 1974. By the way.
so long-standing, which essentially governs all of this. I mean, that's where all of this comes from. Is that true?
Yes, it is, and it's actually funny. I am an ERISA attorney, and I always tell myself, I was born in 1974, the same year that they enacted ERISA. So I just think it was meant to be for me to do this kind of work.
Oh, I'm sure that's exactly what your mother thought, but go on.
Oh, yeah. So listen, how it works is this, and it's very simple. I'm going to share with you a story of what caused, I would say, for my company, a major change. And I'll never forget the day. There was $1 million case, and this will explain to people the most important fiduciary concerns that they will have, and what people need to realize. And we're not talking about people that are new to self-funding or people that are new to health insurance. We're talking about people that have been doing this for 20 plus years that don't understand who's responsible for what, and why I have always had a major concern in this area, because people just feel like, it's like an earthquake, right? Well, it hasn't happened, even though we're on the fault line. There hasn't been one in a while. Let's not worry about it today. And then an earthquake happens. Same thing here. About 15 years ago, I was on a call. There was a conference call. I'll never forget it. And it was over $1 million claim. A claim worth over $1 million. And the claim was for the son of the CFO of the company. Okay? The CFO of the company is on the plan. His son needs this. I forget exactly what it was, but it was a controversial, procedure that many people could have argued it was in a gray area. It could have been covered. It could have not been covered based on experimental.
Yeah.
Was it clinically necessary? Was it medically necessary? Was it already approved by the FDA? All these little pieces that made it a very complicated decision as to whether or not the claim should be paid. So, who was on the phone that day? It's me, the actual third-party administrator, who processes the claims, who creates the plan documents, okay? The third-party administrator. The broker is hired by the company to tell them who should we hire for our TPA, what should we do for our pharmaceuticals, who do we hire for stop loss, and the broker has been there for over 20 years.
Right.
And then last but not least, the most important, in my opinion, in this situation, was the stop loss carrier. As your audience probably knows, stop loss covers you on high dollar claims that you want protection from. So you buy insurance and the stop loss covers it. Okay.
And before you go on, I just want to point out that each one of those, and this is important for the story, I'm pretty sure, each one of those individuals has their own set of incentives that are driven by whatever the background to their role in this activity, correct?
Correct, 100%.
Yeah.
So these folks, the three, and myself are on the call. Now remember, at the time, I'm being paid an hourly fee to give consulting advice.
Yep.
Okay, that's my job. So the first thing happens is the broker, the TPA, the stop loss carrier, and me, they're all sitting there wondering whether or not the claim should be paid, and if the claim is paid, will the stop loss carrier reimburse the payment?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the broker says to the TPA, hey, what do you think? Should we pay the claim? And the TPA turns to the broker and says, it's not our decision. We don't make claim payment decisions. The plan does. Right. Your client, the broker, you tell us what the plan wants to do.
Right.
And the broker says, we have not made a claim payment decision in the 20 years we've been with you. You've always made the decision. Why are you telling me to make that decision now? And that's where all this falls apart, is that what people have to realize is the plan document, your little booklet, that booklet is the decision maker.
Yep.
The booklet tells the TPA whether or not a claim is paid.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And the broker says, we haven't made a decision in 20 years. You tell us. The TPA turns and says, hey, look at page 95 of the plan doc. It specifically says that you make the decisions. So right off the bat, we got a problem. Then everyone turns to the stop loss carrier and says, if we pay the claim, will you reimburse it? Stop loss says, we don't decide that until you decide to pay it. Once you pay it, you submit it to us for reimbursement.
Right.
But before you pay it, we don't make we have no opinion. So what does everyone do? They all turn to me. They're all looking at me and they go, Adam, should this claim be paid or not? And I'm sitting there going, you're paying me $500 an hour on $1 million claim. I'm not paid enough money here to make this decision. And that's when a light switched in my head. Why are employers, stop loss carriers, third-party administrators and brokers and everyone, they have no idea. The actual responsibility lies with the plan sponsor. Those two people, those three people, that one person, that committee who make final claim decisions. Because as you can imagine, every once in a while, there's a gray area, high dollar claim that you're confused about, conflicted about. And to be quite honest, most plans, most employers, think about this. Imagine HR has the fiduciary responsibility. Right down the hall is the CFO.
Right.
You're going to make $1 million claim decision that's going to decide whether or not that guy's child has $1 million claims paid. You see all the emotional, legal, it's everything. Right. It's crazy. But that's the reality that people have to understand is that we're in.
So I think, a couple of threads to pull out here that are important. The first is, and I think you teased this at the beginning, but things that never happened before happen all the time.
Yes.
Is, numero uno in all of this. And then secondly, and this feels like the parable of everybody, somebody, anybody, and nobody. And I don't know which one you were in that particular sequence, but, everybody blames somebody when nobody did what anybody could have done,
yes.
Is the sort of ultimate punchline in all of this. But it feels a little bit like the conflicting incentives that are set up in this scenario are problematic. And am I right in saying that's not been resolved at this point? I mean, this is still the case running forward for most companies, if not all companies?
It is the case. And, and again, I'm not trying to make this a commercial for my organization.
I'm just going to say ruh-roh.
But that day is when I came up with the new service.
You created your service and company.
And the service was that you can outsource the final level appeals decision to a third party,
right?
That can do all the research, whether it's clinical or legal,
right,
and decide whether or not that claim is payable, and then they have to stand behind it. That's what and that funny part is when we looked into creating this service, I looked, I'm like, it must already exist. Somebody must have already done this. Didn't even exist. So the key thing here is people have to understand it's understanding what you're responsible for in the first place.
Yeah.
And then once you know that you're responsible for it, how do you deal with it? So going back to
Can I push back just a little bit because
Push
that's
back all
part
you
of the
want.
purpose. I mean, all sounds entirely logical, but my pushback here is, but this feels like yet another layer of administrative whatever and importantly cost that we have now added in to this already complex whatever, and that feels like not cost reduction but ultimately increasing a cost.
I can see that being that's a fair, valid point you're making.
Mm-hmm.
However, what is the cost? It depends on what the cost is, and you mentioned another layer. The number of claims the only claims that this occurs on are never the small dollar claims.
Yep.
These are always six-figure claims when this type of situation occurs. And let's just say they didn't outsource it to a third-party organization and make the decision on it. Now what? Now you have exactly what has happened in years past, where you got employees upset with their employer.
Yeah.
You have people at the company hearing the story of, Joe, the CFO's child's claims weren't paid.
Yeah.
Now you got people upset with the employer. Now you have the employer upset with their administrator. Now you have the It just causes it's a volcano eruption versus actually making the right decision and using the right process to make that decision. So what people don't realize is you have a duty to be prudent. Going back to my discussion about reimbursement.
Yep.
Every plan has a duty, if you find out that you've paid a claim that you shouldn't have paid, an overpayment, to try to get that money back.
Right.
Okay? But what does prudent mean? If I have overpaid a doctor, let's say $1,000, okay? How should I try to get that $1,000 back, and how hard should I try to get that $1,000 back? It's going to cost me, if I write a letter to a doctor, say, hey, we're the plan. We paid you $1,000 twice for one service. Can you send us $1,000 back? I've sent one letter. Then I sent a follow-up letter. Then a third letter. Then a fourth letter. Do I file a lawsuit? Do I have a duty because we messed up to file a lawsuit? I will end up spending $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. Yep. So the definition of prudence comes into play here. It doesn't make any sense for me to spend $10,000 to get $1,000 back. So all the litigation that we see out there, when I read the cases and I see what's going on, whether it's Johnson & Johnson lawsuits, whether it's the Lewandowski lawsuits, whatever it might be, I always have to look at, all right, one, what happened? What was the process? How far do the parties have to go to try to get the money back? And then how much of a spotlight do you put on the process if it's the normal, reasonable process that every other company in our industry also does? So there's so much when it comes to this. But my friend, don't forget, and I'm an attorney, so I'm putting down my own people. A big part of all this is lawyers looking for that next big case.
Folks that know me well know that I have asked specifically for my headstone or whatever I end up being buried with to have 3 words on it: follow the money. It's all about the incentive, unfortunately, and we have to fix the underlying incentive, which is just a little bit troubling to me because I feel like what's the answer to that? Because you and I both, and I think the vast majority of people, even when they're following the incentive, I mean, let's not sort of cast aspersions on these individuals and suggest that they're, behaving badly, because I don't think that's the way this plays out or is, there are a few exceptions, but the majority of people are trying to do the right thing, but they have to work to that, even if they don't consciously. How is that fixable, and how should companies think about this? Because this is very troubling in so many ways.
100%. I can tell you this. To me, the easiest way to, I don't want to say the easiest, probably the wrong word, but it is probably, I'm gonna keep that word, easiest.
Okay.
Is to have just full transparency in what you're doing. So I'm going to give you an example.
Oh, I like this.
I have seen thousands of situations where brokers are paid a fixed rate, the fixed fee, right? You're the broker, you're paid a fixed fee. All right, and people like that. Because why? They're not overcharging, you know exactly what they're charging. But as you know, human nature, sometimes when you get a fixed fee, you get lazy, you get complacent. There's no incentive for the broker to do anything extra.
Right.
Now you can say, what are you talking about? You know, they can replace that broker. Yeah, next year,
right,
a year later. But if you hire a broker to manage your plan for the next year, for the next 12 months, and you go, we're going to pay you, you know, $100,000 a month. Okay. What's better? That or a broker that comes in and says, listen,
right.
your increases are going up by 20-25% every year.
Yep.
I am going to go in there and I am going to build a plan that's going to save you 40% on your plan. But I'm going to charge you
right
30% of that as my fee.
Yep. You're at this fundamental sort of nexus for me as I think about healthcare in general. And, you know, I saw this in the NHS, which, you know, folks can say, well, it was free. It wasn't free. It was free at the point of service, etc. Right. But the reality was that all of those inefficiencies that you describe, I could see and were evident in, you know, the long waiting lists, the clinics where, hey, I'm just getting paid, so I'm just going to work. Whereas if you create the incentive, and part of me feels that the challenge here is how do you cap that? Because it's the exceptions that tend to spoil this. Because there's no harm in folks being incentivized to really be efficient, with all of those. But when you go, oh, this is really cool, we can, you know, manipulate this, and you get all of the can you cap it?
Yes.
Yes? Okay.
So I would argue the best way to work on this going forward would be to have an incentive plan tied to a percentage of savings to show that person is working, that brokerage firm is working, whatever it might be, but then cap it. Now, why? Because you mentioned it. Nick, we're talking about 1 out of 100 situations where you actually have a broker or some entity making more money on the claim than the doctor.
Yep.
That's a little nuts, but it happens. So by capping it, but I had a recent situation tied to a fiduciary, a breach of fiduciary duty, where the employees of a union plan sued the brokerage firm for excessive fees. So they sued everybody, right? They sued the TPA for allowing it to happen. They sued the plan for signing a contract with the broker.
Right.
And then it was a public hearing, and I was there, and it was awesome. And the broker stands up there, and people are going, "You made $10 million off our plan." And the broker just sits up there and goes, "You know what? You're right. I did make $10 million for your plan, but I saved the plan $100 million this year."
Right.
Compared to what you were spending last year. So in that situation, there was a cap.
Yep.
But people were still so upset because they could see that one person or one group of people were getting this big check, instead of looking back going, wait a second, how does this person get paid? This person gets paid by finding savings on charges.
Yeah.
A lot easier to blame one brokerage firm than it would be to blame every hospital in the metro area for charging too much, for the PBMs for charging too much, for the pharmaceutical companies to charge too much. So that's why I think what we haven't seen in the health plan side when it comes to fiduciary breaches, it's not as simple as what we have seen in the 401k world.
Right.
In the 401k world, the reason why you see all this litigation and all these lawsuits and settlements is because in the 401k world, it's pretty easy. I hire a brokerage firm to invest for me.
To manage and invest. Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
Simple. And that investment, either for the company, for their employee, welfare plan, either makes a lot of money or loses money, but it's all tied to the stock market and how that performs. So it's very different than in our world, where nobody has ever questioned charges. Nobody has ever questioned PBM fees. Nobody's ever questioned, why are there PBMs in the first place? You know, I had to go recently to an urgent care for myself. I walked into the urgent care and I noticed no signage of prices.
Oh God, what?
And I said, I can argue that's a fiduciary breach, in my opinion. I sit there and go, in 2021, January of 2021, all providers are supposed to show their pricing, and only 25% have done so. So I said, Miss, how much does it cost for me to walk in here, to walk through that door and see a doctor? What's it cost? And the woman said, I don't know.
Yep. Common refrain. Let's be clear. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. We're on another topic of pricing and transparency. You bring up the transparency. Let me just sort of tease this out. So there is fiduciary responsibility. We have complexity in healthcare that is not the same as it is in other institutional
like 401k plans and pension
where
plans.
It's easier to sort of reconcile that. There are solutions to this. Those solutions do cost money. They need to incorporate incentives if you want to get the maximum efficiency, but those incentives need to be capped at, reasonable levels that are appropriate and, cataloged against this. There are solutions, but, ultimately this boils down to much more focus, much more intent on the part of the government, the regulatory authorities, and, you should be avoiding this. You should be paying attention to this. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself in, lots of trouble that's going to be very expensive. But we have run out of time, as we always do, unfortunately. It's always a pleasure, Adam. As always, learned a lot. I think we have some great insights that our listeners can, react to and pay attention to. Adam, thank you for joining me again on the show.
I appreciate it. And if possible, I give one takeaway. Really quick, understand who the plan fiduciaries are and make sure that the fiduciaries have a documented, repeated process for vendor selection, for every selection of all the entities they're going to utilize. Make sure it's monitored and that the compensation model is a reasonable model that can be defended. If you can do those things, then I feel that you can, stay away from any fiduciary breaches. But again, honestly, thank you so much for the time today. It means a lot.